When it comes to the Knicks and starting with their own free agents or upcoming free agents, Mikal Bridges is number one target right now. He's eligible for a 4-year, $156 million contract extension. Where do you think the Knicks go there with Mikal Bridges and again with all these apron implications?
Yeah, when I wrote up their off-season preview for Spot Track, he was one of the players I focused on. I didn't focus too much on trades and all. Trades are very hard to predict, and I like playing trade games as much as everybody else does, but I try not to do that when I'm breaking down an off-season preview. And quite frankly, their own free agents are they're more likely to be minimum type guys that return back to the Knicks, or that's what they'll be elsewhere. So it was a lot more about the extensions. So with Bridges, I think when Jalen Brunson took less money, I think that kind of set the tone for,
Yeah.
hey, some other guys are going to follow suit. There, we're going to try to do what we can to avoid maxing this out and not being able to add help down the line. And their other contracts are in pretty good shape for the most part. So I think for Bridges, there's an understanding of, hey, we can't give you max money or anything like that. And I don't think he's necessarily going to push for it. So what I threw out there was maybe you do a 3-year deal, which aligns him with Brunson and with Anunoby, a 3-year extension that is. Then those guys are now all on the same exact timeline. And what you can really say is, all right, we're going to be dancing around these aprons for the run with these guys and with Towns and with Hart, but we've got a good solid group and we can make a good 3-year run at this. And then if it's not working, then we'll readdress in a few years and we can start to figure out other options. And that's what I think we're likely to see the Knicks do, is something like that. And I said 3 years, 111 million. It's about 37 million a year. Feels pretty fair for me for what Mikal Bridges is. And I think that's a direction that I would look to, something in that range. It might come in 4 years. Maybe they go to that 4 years. I don't know that they'll go full what he could get, but maybe slightly under that. But I do think it'll come in somewhere around that range.
Yeah, because for me, I hope he does take less. I think it only makes sense. And like you said, it seems like Brunson did kind of set that tone as the captain, as the leader of the team, and just understanding that, hey, listen, we're facing a lot of restrictions here. If we really want to do something special here in New York, we all have to make that sacrifice. And so I hope Mikal Bridges does. But, from a talent and trade standpoint, like you said, it's hard to predict trades, especially in under these circumstances. But from a talent standpoint, unless it's just an aggregate trade where you're using the Mikal Bridges in some sort of blockbuster, which I just don't see too many out there, I think it would behoove the Knicks and Mikal Bridges come to the table on a smaller deal. Hope that the next coach can maximize that talent and the chemistry between Bridges, Towns, and Brunson, because I think there is more there to unlock with Mikal Bridges. He certainly showed some more pop in his defense and at times offensively in the playoffs. Pacers series kind of struggled, but I just think that's the best course. I don't see a trade where it makes sense for the Knicks, even if they're getting depth pieces back. They still need another guy with some punch.
100%. And then there's also, right, to some extent, I want to say I don't care about optics, because whatever you did's done. We can't go back and undo it.
Yeah.
The reality is optics do matter. They gave up everything to get Mikal Bridges. You go now and trade him for, yeah, we turned him into two nice depth pieces. People are going to be like, we needed to trade 5 first-round picks to turn him into 2 depth pieces a year later? Like, what are we doing? That doesn't make sense to me, because I think I just said I don't think you're going to be able to build the 3-star roster. You have to have depth of talent around, but there's something to said to still have high-end players.
Right.
And I think Bridges' place in the Knicks pecking order, especially on the offensive end, is right where it should be. I think in Brooklyn, yeah, he put up big numbers, but you saw his efficiency dropped a little bit. I just don't think he's a number 1 or number 2 offensive option. When he's number 3, you're probably pretty good. And guess what? The other 2 guys who are number 1 and 2 are really, really good offensive options. So if he's number 3, you're going to be a good team offensively. And then you mentioned the defense. I felt like this was the first year the Nets years will get a little wonky, especially that last one, because they were a little bit of a weird team. Whereas, like, all right, they're gonna rebuild. It's not exactly the same Nets group. But I thought this last year, especially in the second half of the season in the playoffs, started looking a lot more like the defensive player the Phoenix Suns had.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, okay, he's still got that ability to lock up. Some of the things he did to some of the Celtics guys in those games, especially late in games, was like, this is the guy that we all loved a few years ago when he was kind of coming to prominence with the Suns. And that's what, yeah, he's I like to live by the motto, there's very few actual untouchable players in the NBA, but he's not on the table for me. You're gonna have to call me and blow me away before I'm thinking about moving Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. And so with that figure, that estimate that you made, the 3 years, 111, you said 111.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah.
111 feels like a fair compromise. It again lines his contract nicely with Brunson and Anunoby, and then it gets him back on the market in a few years, and then he's not. It's not, you're not locking in longer term than maybe you need to.
Now, based on that, have you looked at whether or not that would put them in second apron area, or would they still be within that first apron kind of safety net, if you will?
Yeah, it's a good question. Here's a little bit of the good news, I guess, is the cap's going to go up again next offseason, probably up again by 10%. So yeah, that's going to jump them up if and I'm just going to do some quick math here while we're talking. So you know, let me go on the fly.
Man. Salute to everybody in the chat, breaking it down here. Keith Smith, 2025 free agency. Let's go. Here we go.
They would be if you if you had them on the books starting in the 26-27 season for 37 million, they're about in the same place that they are now, where you're dancing around that apron line, right? You've got to, well, let's see what happens with Mitchell Robinson. If you put, I think I pitched 16 million for him. You put him on the books. Yeah, now you're barely up over the second apron. So that's where it's going to become, all right, maybe we got to do a little bit of maneuvering here. Maybe you get one of the guys to take a little less, or you don't do any kind of flat or front loading of the contracts. You let them gradually build up, because the most a contract can go up year over year is 8%, and the caps, at least for another couple years, should grow 10%. So you're kind of, hopefully the cap growth outpaces it, but you're going to be dancing around that second apron kind of like they are this year, if you re-sign your guys. But if you're a title contender, which I believe they are, that's kind of the world you're going to end up living in anyway.
Yeah, well said. Now, when you mentioned Mitchell Robinson, Daniel Gafford did get his new deal, and that was it 360? I'm just looking up the numbers again.
Less than that.
A little less.
Slightly less, I think.
Okay. What did you think that the Gafford deal may have in terms of impacting Mitchell Robinson's market?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the way one player at the same position signing a contract, impacting another player at the same positions, 360. You were spot on it. I'm thinking it's the way it's going to be structured. Like,
okay.
With that, but yes. So the point I was going to make is, I think that's gone away a little bit. I don't think it's as much as like what it used to be. Like, I don't think Mitchell Robinson can walk into the front office and say, Daniel Gafford got 3 for 60. You have to give that to me. Because I think what the Knicks front office is going to fire back with, because it's a bunch of smart guys in there, are going to say, hey, that's not the same situation. Like, it's just not. Like, we have to be conscious of X, Y, and Z. All of that said, I think that sets the high end benchmark for where you would go with Robinson, only because Daniel Gafford's been moderately healthy throughout the run of his career. Mitchell Robinson has missed an awful lot of time. So I think you got to protect against that. And there is still a world where in Dallas, Daniel Gafford plays himself back into being the starting five, because let's see with Derek Lively. We all like Derek Lively, but year two was kind of a mess for Derek Lively. Daniel Gafford was the better player of the two in year two. So I think with Mitchell Robinson, if Karl-Anthony Towns is there, unless they do the dual big starting group, which who knows? We'll see whoever they hire as a new coach and how they feel about constructing the lineups. You have to be very cautious of where are we going, even though he's a very important player. There's still a limit to what you're going to play a guy who is a, let's say, a 20 to 25 minute a night player. You have to be cautious on that. So that's kind of sets the high end. I'd go slightly lower than that. And then also with the Knicks, you're going to be saying, hey, everybody else gave up a little here. We need you to give up a little too, because we need to be able to fill out the roster in a reasonable way around you guys.
Yeah. And he's another interesting one, man, because he's so impactful for this team and very much needed as a defensive anchor, signal caller, all of that, leader, especially on the court for sure. I just, and then you could also make a case, as some fans say, hey, this is the best it's going to get for him. Try to trade him now and get some depth pieces that you may not be able to get, on the vet minimum market. So it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I've seen people suggest, and I don't argue with them too hard, of, hey, like if we're only going to get 45 games a year out of this guy, I'd rather get somebody who, even if the upside isn't there, is just we're going to get 70 games out of him. I'd rather have somebody like that for maybe a little bit less money, and then maybe we can get a backup wing too, or something along those lines. And sure, that's definitely true. I think you want to be a little cautious because I think no matter who the new coach comes in, we have to own when you play Townsend Brunson rather. You need defenders out there with
Sure.
them, and there's you just got to have guys who can kind of hold down the defensive end, and that's where you're going to be very careful because again, throughout the playoffs, we saw Mitchell Robinson's defensive impact show up, all the things he can do. He's just such a special defender with the way he can switch out on the perimeter. And I mean, he's got to be the best jump shot blocking big man in the league because they're like, I like to say, nobody bothers Kristaps Porzingis' 3-point shot. Mitch Robinson does.
That's right.
Because he's going to get up there to challenge it, and that's the only one who does that to him. So with if he's doing it to him, he can certainly do it to others. So that's where I'd be very careful with this. One thing too for the Knicks is you don't want to mess around too much because next summer there are going to be real teams with cap space. It's not just going to be the Nets sitting out there with cap space. You might have a couple of teams that are like, you know what, we can kind of do to you guys what happened to you with Isaiah Hartenstein, where they could not pay him that, but now they've got sufficient bird rights to pay these guys whatever, but it might turn into, whoa, wait a minute, now we're 10 million over the second apron. That's a tough place to be living. Last thing I'll kind of say, because it kind of pulls it all together on this topic, is the second apron, it's tough, but if you're a title contender, you can go, it's not a nice place to visit, but you stay there for a year and then you get out of there, right? You go, you stay there a year and you get out of there because it's going to make that 1 year tough to do some stuff, but you're not triggering the things like frozen draft pick,
Right.
And potentially running into that pick being dropped to the end of the first round and all the really long-term things that hit you.
Yeah.
You can go. You go, you visit for a year, you get your work done, and then you get out of there if you can. And that's what I think you're going to see a lot of these teams try to do. They don't want to get caught there like Boston did, unfortunately, and had to break up more, or like where Phoenix is. I think Phoenix has set up permanent residency there now.